I feel like there's a little bit of a debate going on right now. Do you feel like this team is different than teams we've seen in the past for the Tigers?
Certainly a little bit different because they're 0-2 for the first time since I think 2010 in the ACC. So not great from that aspect, right? When you're looking at, obviously being eliminated from the playoff contention, but the way that this year's shaken out and the quality of football teams that we have in this conference this year that are going out of conference, dominating, and now that we're getting into conference play, we're starting to see some teams really jack it up. Are you out of ACC championship play with 2 losses? Is it going to be a team, with 1 loss or less that plays for that thing? So I'm fascinated to see it, man. Obviously a bit of a learning curve offensively and had a weird just, kind of time with turnovers, really going back to the last regular season last year facing South Carolina at home. And you think how losses have been directly impacted by just silly bad turnovers. So we've seen that now in 4 losses with the Tigers, and something they've got to be able to shake off.
Yeah, and you mentioned those turnovers. What else stood out to you from that game against Florida State for Clemson?
Well, funnily enough, if you would have asked me on Saturday, you would have got more of a raw, emotional answer from a fan perspective. But Clemson played really well. I mean, that was probably the best game I've seen them play in 2 years from a execution standpoint, throwing the ball. Cade looks super confident back there. Obviously, the running game was what it was. Will Shipley used in a plethora of different ways, and then a defense that held a team in Florida State who wants their identity to be running the football to 22 yards rushing. I mean, that's unbelievable to be able to do that. Containing and getting after a mobile quarterback in Jordan Travis, obviously was impressive how they did that. But, that one mistake where it was a sack fumble for a touchdown just was insurmountable. And Clemson couldn't quite get over, that. And where they could have put them away, you're up 2 touchdowns. Who knows what the rest of that game looks like. But certainly a great effort, and you would think something that Clemson can build off.
Yeah. And you mentioned a little bit Cade Klubnik, Will Shipley, the 2 stars on this team. I think Syracuse fans are still a little scared of these 2 because of what happened last year between
Sure.
Clemson and Syracuse. What do you think makes that duo so special for them?
Yeah, scared or pissed? I'd probably say pissed is the better way to look at it, especially with that kind of penalty there at the end of the game. I think really what separates them from a lot of people, man, is their passion and their just energy levels. Like, these are 2 emotional leaders that get it going, that get jacked up, that can really boost your team in the moment. And we've seen that, and we've seen, obviously, as I said, a learning curve from Cade where he's figuring it all out, and now that he's the guy. But for 3 straight years, Will Shipley has been the Energizer Bunny. I mean, it never matters what happens. He's a guy that's going full speed ahead and trying, no matter the circumstance, to get his team back in a fight or continue to, kind of press the hammer down and get the dub. So, they're obviously very special. Will Shipley, as we saw in this past game against Florida State, a lot of ways you can use him. Finally got in the end zone rushing touchdown. He has a couple of receiving, but a very versatile piece that you would think Clemson continues to expound on his usage, whether that's splitting him out. Maybe you see him a little bit at receiver. Maybe you see him stay in the backfield. And then just Cade finding his way, being able to push the ball downfield is still kind of the last piece of this Clemson offense of what we expected probably a lot earlier, which fair or not fair, but we just haven't seen that consistently yet.
And how do you feel like that duo compares to the duo that Syracuse has here between Garrett Schrader and LaQuint Allen?
Yeah, I think it's split, either way. I think when you look at quarterback play, obviously Schrader, being an older guy, is at his absolute peak right now. He's playing so well in the way he sees the field, decisions that he's making, pushing the ball, being accurate with the ball. And then, of course, with his legs. I mean, dude's leading the team in rushing. He's an absolute weapon. He's a massive guy, too, that loves contact out in the open field. And he's healthy. I think that's a big piece. Going into this game last year, I felt like he was a little bit banged up, and certainly by the end of the game, I mean, the fact that he finished it was maybe remarkable. And then running back, I think you obviously give to Will Shipley. I think he's one of the best in the country. Not saying LaQuint can't get to that at a given point, and same thing for Cade Klubnik, but those are kind of the 2 leaders. It's a split decision there.
And now, Eric, you were someone who played for the Clemson Tigers. You've played in this game between Syracuse and Clemson. There's been a lot of historic games between the two opponents over the years. Might be a tough question to answer, but is this something like, would you consider this a rivalry game, or a little
Yeah.
more? Are the players a little more motivated than the average ACC opponent, you think, just because of years past?
Yeah, you know, it's funny that's like the fourth time I've been asked that about this game, and I say yes, but maybe there's a better term for it, because I know that some fans, maybe more in particular, actually probably both. You know, when you look at the record and it's 9 wins to 1 loss, Clemson leading the way, they're like, oh, it's not a rivalry. But these games are always weird. They're always uncomfortable. You never know what's going to happen, what crazy turnover is going to occur in games where maybe you thought Clemson was going to run the table. Cuse is right there and even won. That year in 2017. So at the Dome. So I don't know if rivalry is the right word, but it's a fun game, and I always look forward to it. And even when I was playing, I remember us going up to the Dome, for the first time in maybe 2013, I think it was. Just seeing her 14 when they came into the league, and just seeing, okay, this place is nuts, to see that they were having basketball practice, and then we go and they flip the entire stadium, the next day or 2 days later. So it's an awesome atmosphere. I think Clemson fans, enjoy going up there, and hopefully vice versa when Cuse fans come down to Death Valley. But yeah, it's always a stickler, man. I don't know. We need to figure out what to call this thing. I don't know if rivalry is quite it or not.
Yeah, no, it's definitely always fun. I'm sure that's what it'll be on Saturday. If Syracuse does get the win on Saturday, right now they have a few votes for the top 25. They're not there yet. If they were to get the win on Saturday, would you say that's enough to put them in the top 25?
It'll be interesting. And obviously what happens around the country, I think is certainly a thing. And, people just, for whatever reason, man, always want to discredit the ACC, I get that to an extent. It's cool to do for some networks and things of that nature, some TV shows, but this is a really good conference and a really good league. And for the ACC to do what it has done and go out of conference and get these massive dubs against the SEC, against the Big Ten, playing bully ball those first 2-3 weeks of the season, that's impressive. And that's what you have to do. And, I think it's one of those things where just win and it'll take care of itself. Don't get caught up, especially in a poll that is so insignificant and does not matter at all. Our goal should be for Syracuse to be ranked in the college football playoff poll. That's what I want. That's what I want to see. So this AP poll, man, I could give a dang less about it.
Yeah, I agree. It's always just so early when it's so
right.
early in this.
It is fun to see a number by your name, though. I'll say that. It is fun to see that.
Yeah, there's definitely more hype on campus if that were to happen. But I think a win over Clemson would definitely be enough hype for Syracuse. When you look at the rest of the season for the Orange, they got, after Clemson, they got at Florida State. I want to say at UNC, at Virginia Tech, and then they play some easier opponents: Boston College, Pitt. Right. Where do you see kind of that win total adding up? That it's kind of similar to how they started last year for Syracuse. They started out really well, and then it didn't end so well. Where do you see that progressing throughout the course of this season?
Yeah, here's your reward for going 4-0. You got Clemson, then at Carolina, at Florida State, at Virginia Tech, back to back to back to back. I mean, it's crazy. When you look at this schedule, I mean, it's brutal. Can you get through that injury free? That'll be the biggest thing, because, I think that's truly what happened to Cuse last year is you've got this great team, but just not a lot of depth. And when 1 or 2, 3 guys go down, it's like, my gosh, here we are, dealing with the bare bones of this roster. A lot of young guys, a lot of inexperienced guys having to play. And we're seeing that a little bit with the wide receiver room. I mean, that was a stacked room coming into the year. And obviously, if you can lose a couple of guys from a position, now you don't want to lose your best player, clearly, in Arande. But, if there was a room that you felt okay about, it was that room. And you're seeing other guys step up now with opportunity. So that'll be the biggest indicator for me, man. Who can stay the healthiest? Do we get out of this stretch here, this 4-game stretch, injury free? And if that's the case, then shoot, look out. Because, I mean, the back half of the season and really even start, I know it's at Virginia Tech, and that's always a tough place, but they're not playing great football right now. Boston College isn't, Pitt isn't, Georgia Tech kind of, and Wake Forest is struggling. So, I mean, if you get through that, not unscathed in the loss column, but unscathed health-wise, man, you've got a great finish. And I think that's really been the emphasis of this team is we started so great, 6-0, 14th in the country. then it just fell by the wayside and injuries occurred. So I think there's a ton of emphasis on finishing this year. And who knows, man? I think bowling for sure. I think that's the minimum. But man, if we can creep up to 9, 8 wins, what a great successful season that would be, and maybe a 9th or 10th in the bowl game. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely have to pay attention to those injuries for any position group. But for me, watching it anytime Schrader rushes outside the pocket, I think
hold your breath for a second.
Just get a little
Yeah.
scared because they know how much this team is relying on him right now. I think so.
No question.